We're already about halfway into January. It's time to finally wrap up 2023. Initially, this year felt slightly underwhelming before entering the holiday season, but 2 December releases managed to become my favorite films of the year. 2022 seemed to have more frequent streaming releases overall, so I'll be sure to encompass my feelings on all cinematic related art, whether that be short form or long form in this video to make up for that fact. This will be much less structured in comparison to last year's breakdown, and if I don't mention your favorite film or TV show, leave a comment and I will tell you my thoughts on it down below. I didn't see too many short films released last year, but Wes Anderson's 4 Netflix films, The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, The Swan, Poison, and The Ratcatcher all capture the essence of what you would expect from the auteur. Whimsical and charming at their core, any longtime fan of Anderson's distinct directing style will appreciate what went into these. Pedro Almodovar's Strange Way of Life luckily made its way to Mubi quite recently, making it a must-watch. Ethan Hawke is one of my favorite actors of all time, and his partnership with the on-fire Pedro Pascal contributed to the atmospherically intriguing work. I do feel that the film would have greatly benefited from being feature-length, however, but it does retain much of Almodovar's tenderness, and it still feels like much of that story is left unexplored due to the runtime. American supergroup Boy Genius, consisting of the brilliant Phoebe Bridgers, Julian Baker, and Lucy Dacus, released a short film to coincide with the release of 3 singles off of their debut album, The Record. Directed by Kristen Stewart, the camaraderie of the group is depicted in a heartfelt manner, with each song catering to the lead artist's respective personality. I highly recommend listening to the album if you're a fan of indie music. Lastly, be sure to check out Bouquet of Cinema's experimental filmography, which is highly underrated and imaginative to the highest degree. I'll link the channel down below in the description. I'm always on the lookout for more short-form cinema, so be sure to recommend your favorites to me. Here's my topster for the year if you're wondering what new music I enjoyed this year. I forgot to include Paramore's This Is Why and Reverend Kristen Michael Hayter's Saved, the latter of which places among the best records of the decade so far for me. Music videos and concert films are a special type of cinema that deserve more attention. I find them intriguing in the simplest of ways. Be sure to check out my last video for a more in-depth look at this topic. I am compelled to shine the brightest of lights on Hayter's music videos. Her previous work under the moniker Lingua Ignota cannot be understated, with its stance on domestic violence serving as a testament to the importance of believing survivors. While Caligula and Sinner Get Ready, her respective releases in 2018 and 2021, honed their pursuits on journeying into the vortex of harsh noise, Saved documents salvation through religion. The album still features the dreary tone found within the Lingua Ignota discography, but there's an ethereal presence that comes to light through the juxtaposition of the inherent inner goodness found within one's soul against the external forces that attempt to revoke that energy. Like Have a Nice Life's 2008 album Death Consciousness, the amount of backstory and detail placed into the project is simply outstanding, allowing a plethora of interpretations to be formed. In the music video for All of My Friends Are Going to Hell, superimposition is utilized in the vein of Jack Chambers, culminating in a performative burst of kinetic energy culled by the earth. JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown's collaboration Scaring the Hose is an absolutely chaotic experimental hip-hop album that overwhelms you through a bombardment of frantic samples and lyrical pandemonium. Their DLC pack video EP is reminiscent of JPEG Mafia's early work he released under the moniker Devin Hendrix, specifically the Ghost Pop tape film. The tracks contained in the EP are doused in a mist of vaporwave-esque ambiance, an idiosyncratic combination that unexpectedly meshes brilliantly with Brown and Peggy's lyricism and the breakneck pace of the project. Swifties were overjoyed at the release of Taylor Swift's The Eras Tour concert film, a maximalist take on her groundbreaking tour. My personal favorite concert films of the year aren't as large in scale, but are also defined by new eras in their own right. The National, an indie rock / post-punk revival band, followed up their 2019 album I Am Easy to Find, one of my favorite albums ever made, with 2 2023 releases, First 2 Pages of Frankenstein and Laugh Track. The National, live at Bearsville Theater, feels like the start of a new chapter for the Brooklyn-based band as they revisit familiar classics, some now almost decades old, with a contemporary lens. There's no rendition of Mr. November present in the film. The only fully energetic song that makes his presence is The System Only Dreams in Total Darkness. Stage lighting, a prominent tool in many of the group's shows, are reduced to ambiance here. The crowd and artists are in sync, allowing the environment to feel magical by way of this connection. While the rest of the world ushers in the future at a blinding rate, Berninger's vocals keep us grounded in a stasis, achieving this equilibrium through channeling of the past. A special film for fans who have supported the group through thick and thin, the black and white cinematography is laced with a tint of nostalgia, emphasized by a few spotlights that merge with the shadows. All the very best of us string ourselves up for love. This lyric from Vanderlyle Crybaby Geeks will never get old. Sprain were a slowcore / experimental rock / noise rock band that burst onto the Los Angeles scene in 2018. Their second and final album, The Lamb is Effigy, unknowingly led to a concert film at the Moroccan Lounge in LA to result in what would be also their final live performance. The album is hardcore and avant-garde in every sense of the term, and this specific recording captures it exactly. Erratic camera movement and jarring imagery feed into the sonic dissonance that reverberates through the small area. The close-ups and zooms are reminiscent of early Lars von Trier. It's almost as if the camera is coated by sound waves that pulsate with imperceptible amounts of energy. 150 minutes of pure chaos. If you're a Swans fan, this is a must-watch. Black Country New Road, one of my favorite bands to emerge from this decade, released music for the first time, no pun intended, since the departure of lead vocalist Isaac Wood. BCNR are simply phenomenal and create melodies so specific in feeling. While their 2022 album Ants From Up There is a wholly somber experience, Live at Busch Hall transforms this anxious energy into hope and is self-aware of this ongoing breakup / rebirth phase. The editing and mise-en-scène in particular mesh perfectly. The pair serve to usher in the digital age through at times low-quality yet accessible recordings and new experimentation lyrically and sonically. Upsong is a strong contender for my favorite song of 2023. This film and album mean the world to me. I'd like to highlight some countries that each produced a bunch of outstanding narrative films. British cinema in particular was a personal highlight for me this year, coming in the form of 3 outstanding directorial debuts. Rylane's frenetic editing is reminiscent of the wit found within the best of British comedy. David Johnson and Vivian Oparah give great performances. The frequent use of the fisheye lens complements the overall idiosyncratic color palette. Rain Allen Miller's directing style is executed with abundant flair and charm, using its technical prowess to enhance the straightforward narrative. Charlotte Regan's Scrapper has been dubbed by the internet as a crossover between Aftersun and The Florida Project. While those two films rely solely on subtlety to build emotion, Scrapper portrays the environment with no filter, taking influence from social realism. Jean Renoir and Ken Loach come to mind when talking about this movement. Regan draws out the human intricacies submerged beneath the gaps of life. Home is built by the people that you're with, not where you are. The main takeaway from this is, if you want to earn my praise, just put your main character in a retro West Ham kit. Molly Manning Walker's How to Have Sex features a fantastic ensemble of performances led by an incredible Mia McKenna Bruce. This is a devastating piece of cinema about manipulation, consent, and alienation. Walker forces you to reconstruct events in your mind based on troubling behavior exhibited by those present. It also shows how the struggle of growing up in times where expected conformity is the norm can be devastating. The framing and composition functions as a labyrinth for both the spectator and subject to navigate, with the camera's movement and omnipresence working to simulate the oppressive state of contemporary society's damaging culture. We were lucky to have 4 solid Indian blockbuster films this year: Pathan, Jailer, Leo, and Jawan. Vijay, Shah Rukh Khan, and Rajnikanth all bring their expected megastar power. The action in Jailer and Pathan employs a mythical approach where mysterious figures hold enormous amounts of power, while Leo and Jailer take a more cerebral approach, through basically adding a 25% boost of power into each strike. Puzzles are solved and created simultaneously, and their elaborate plots are unraveled with such unequivocal passion and joy that it's hard not to appreciate the audacity, even if you aren't a fan of mainstream Indian cinema. 2 Japanese films were among the highest acclaimed of the year. Godzilla -1's character-driven approach and emphatic staging allow it to be emotionally resonant on all levels. It's remarkable how good the visual effects are, considering the film's limited budget. Melodrama to enhance the metaphor. The statement encapsulates how the original Godzilla's spirit lives on through -1. Hayao Miyazaki's The Boy and the Heron is yet another wondrous work of art by the auteur. There's so much to unpack from this film that'll be impossible to talk about before watching it again. It's a grand, cosmic tale into the journey of one's mind and the creation of the world itself. The similarities to Spirited Away are abundant, with many of the creature designs feeling like they could have inhabited both worlds. Reassuring and offering a warm embrace, Destiny embraces Miyazaki's filmography in the grandest of ways. This year's Palme d'Or winner hails from France. Justine Trier's Anatomy of a Fall, an ambiguous courtroom drama thriller, may not feel as satisfying as an American counterpart, like Witness for the Prosecution, but it undeniably intrigues the viewer into a web of expectation that never truly reveals itself. The screenplay is riveting and complex, paradoxically confusing the audience with the arrival of new information. Ultimately, its cold and distant approach will determine your overall appreciation and experience. For the amount of backlash franchises received by much of the movie-going public today, here's a list of some of the IP-based films that I greatly enjoyed. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was the last great piece of MCU media. That statement seems misleading, but considering the ludicrous production rate the company has been on, Gunn's film may very well be the end of the MCU brand as we know it. The humor is balanced in this, and the story stays faithful to its own branch of world building, a hurdle that is proving difficult to overcome for Marvel at the moment. On the other hand, Sony knows how to get their animation done right. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse fully capitalizes on the chaos of what a multiverse can bring, becoming an animated work of art for the history books. Once the second part comes out, it'll be justified to formulate a final opinion. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 also falls under the same vein as Across the Spider-Verse. Tom Cruise conjures up creative action set pieces with dynamic stakes, honing a formula that refuses to wither in quality. The reception for Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes seems to stray drastically from either end of the rating spectrum, and I'm on the positive side. It's honestly my favorite Hunger Games movie, and is a clear visual standout in comparison to the rest of the series. Rachel Zegler and Tom Blythe were spot-on choices for the respective characters, never feeling out of place despite the physical space vastness. John Wick Chapter 4 feels like a final chapter of a beloved video game franchise. The spirit of the boogeyman is brought to us by way of a player-controlled character placed within a pre-existing set of code, which may seem slightly unnerving and even out of place at times. Keanu Reeves' endless stoicism complements this, however, and each action sequence unfolds in a grateful manner until jarringly disrupted by short bursts of brutality. Donnie Yen's martial arts expertise is prevalent in every scene, with his already perfected hand-to-hand combat and swordplay skill cementing his status as one of the greatest to ever do it, a statement that Georges St. Pierre would agree with. Moving away from the franchises now, Emma Seligman followed up Shiva Baby with Bottoms, featuring Rachel Sennett in a lead role yet again. Subdued vulgarity in conjunction with Gen Z aphorisms propelled the absurd nature of this comedy to success. Ayo Edebiri's strengths mesh well with the rest of the cast, allowing the extreme pulpiness of the story to complement the vivid caricatures of each individual. Seligman is one to continue looking out for. Poor Things, another disturbing outing from Yorgos Lanthimos, features incredible performances and ornate production design of a technological gothic nature. The makeup and costume design specifically deserve an extra mention as well, adding to the visual splendor that attempts to cover up the dark subject matter and cruel nature of the world. Haley Lou Richardson is my favorite actress, so I have to show some appreciation for her performance in Love at First Sight, which is a cute and moving rom-com based off Jennifer E. Smith's young adult novel, The Statistical Probability of Love at First Sight. I get charmed by these types of movies easily, but this one particularly felt extra genuine. Still, a Michael J. Fox movie was my favorite cinema-related documentary of the year. Fox's charisma overshadows the adversity present within his life. Undying optimism operates as the thesis of the film, a choice that parallels its presentation of archival footage in a literal manner. This allows the film to feel more personal in the process, and Fox's pure, kind-hearted nature and philosophy on life should be an inspiration. As I stated before, everything you need to know about my thoughts on Oppenheimer and Barbie have already been uploaded on the channel. Both are fantastic films. Oppenheimer uses an abundance of information presented in the book and captures the essence of Nolan's power as an artist, while Gerwig leaves plenty of room for interpretation in her presentation of feminism. As a massive football fan, documentaries on the subject play a significant role in my life. My NWSL team, Angel City, had a series to commemorate the beginning of the club. It's great to see the women's game grow in stature, especially on the domestic level. Under Pressure told the story of the USWNT's journey through the 2023 FIFA World Cup, featuring in-depth insight from many of the team's members. Christy Mewis practically contributes to 80% of the interviews, which is something that no one should complain about. It's a solid watch that is representative of the growth of women's sports across the world, despite it being solely about the American team, and serves as a great counterpart to Angel City. Both are highly accessible to new fans looking to learn more about the sport. Real Madrid Until the End is mostly fan service for Madridistas, offering nostalgic bliss and jovial insight into the team's historic Champions League run a couple of years ago, marking an end of an era for many of the team's all-time greats like Sergio Ramos, Marcelo, and Rafael Varane. It's a bittersweet time capsule. This documentary is slightly more esoteric, since you probably need to have watched at least some domestic league English football to have heard of Peter Crouch. That Peter Crouch film is as interesting as you'd expect it to be. Its subject is a 6'7" striker who played all over England with a strong cult following. Crouch is a one-of-a-kind footballer and person with a genuine love for the game and his life. The story is one filled with a unique sense of perseverance. Super League, the war for football, plays out like a political drama and is massively underseen. Anyone slightly interested in sports will have heard of plans to destroy the game itself in the form of an elitist Super League devoid of any quality that makes football football. Much of its time is spent on Alexander Cheferin, the president of UEFA, and his pursuit to combat the preposterous measures to attack the system. Riveting throughout, this is an insight into the dynamics of power at play and a prime example of the dangers of rampant commercialization. Beckham, a miniseries released on Netflix, is a fantastic profile of the man who revolutionized what it means to be a public figure in the footballing world. The transitions as a person and player, from playing at Manchester United to Real Madrid to the LA Galaxy, were detailed and honest, never painting him to be anything that he wasn't. I'm grateful that Skinamarink further pushed analog horror into the mainstream, coincidentally being released in the same year as Five Nights at Freddy's. Analog horror does a brilliant job in questioning the boundaries of what cinema can be. The use of old material like VHS tapes, physical manipulation of that material, and an indirect sense of interaction all contribute to the bending of the medium. It feels odd to label Skinamarink as a narrative film, despite it fitting all of the necessary requirements. The essential elements of the avant-garde engrave themselves in the work as well. Kyle Edward Ball's knowledge of his childhood home makes it obvious that this vision would never have come to life if under the direction of another person, something that must be commended despite whatever opinions one may have about the film. The Holdovers feels like a cup of hot chocolate with an already melted marshmallow in it, only for it to go cold, and then for you to realize that it somehow tastes even better when it's reheated in the microwave. Paul Giamatti, Dominic Sessa, and Davine Joy Randolph lead the film to new heights, balancing melodrama with a poignant understanding of comedic timing. Earnest and sentimental without being overbearing, this is a story about companionship and platonic love, something necessary to sustain human life. All of Us Strangers. Now this is a special film. Andrew Hay's adaptation of Taichi Yamada's outstanding novel called Strangers, and subsequently Nobuhiko Obayashi's 1998 film The Discarnates, switches one of the key genres from the source material while emphasizing the beauty of love in all forms. Paul Mescal dances yet again, now a guaranteed prerequisite for an absolutely heartbreaking film filled with classic 80s songs. The best male performance of the year belongs to Andrew Scott for me. Jamie Bell and Claire Foy are also mesmerizing, and that's all I'll say for now. If you haven't yet seen this, go in blind. You will not regret it. The Zone of Interest left me with a sinking feeling in my stomach. Jonathan Glazer's directorial reception is akin to someone like Lynn Ramsey's to me. They both have made a handful of films, none of which are entirely traditional but never forsake their accessibility in the long run. Without overtly altering any narrative cinematic conventions, he manages to utilize sound as the driving force. However, this sound isn't placed at the forefront except in a handful of specific scenes. Based on Martin Amis's 2014 novel of the same name, the source material's message remains intact, yet is completely altered in its overarching presentation. Glazer's propensity to discard narrative events on the whole to force the audience to question exactly what they should be paying attention to is something very difficult to do, but he does it brilliantly. The tone and pacing of the film is similar to Michael Haneke's The White Ribbon, but instead of spreading the mystery throughout, it only appears briefly and sporadically. Nothing comes close this year to the Zone of Interest sound design. The audio is equally important to what's on screen, and this is a visual medium we're talking about. That's a wrap on the year. I hope you enjoyed hearing about the art I engaged with. Once again, be sure to let me know if I missed any of your favorites and I'll give you my opinions on them. In honor of my favorites, videos on All of Us Strangers and the Zone of Interest are currently in the works. Thank you for watching. If you would consider subscribing to the channel, I would truly appreciate it.